It was supposed to be just another blind date. Tall wine glasses, soft violin in the background, a perfect rooftop restaurant with a view of the city lights, and sitting across the table, yet another perfect woman from a wealthy family. Designer bag, flawless makeup, and a rehearsed smile. She checked every box: polite, educated, accomplished, boring. CEO Li Ziyan stirred his espresso slowly, hiding a sigh behind his cup. His assistant had outdone herself this time. This woman came from one of the top banking families. She hadn't said a single wrong word in 20 minutes. But that was the problem. It all felt scripted, controlled, predictable. He'd sat through dozens of these dates in the past 6 months. Every single woman dressed the part, spoke the part, smiled at the right moments, and none of them made him feel anything. Ziyan, what are your long-term financial goals in terms of family planning? The woman across him asked, her tone businesslike. He blinked. Was she seriously talking like this on a first date? For the first time in a while, Li Ziyan cut the date short. He stood up politely, paid the bill, gave a professional smile, and said all the usual polite things. But inside, he was tired. Tired of women who wanted the CEO, not the man. Tired of the stiff, elegance and curated manners. Tired of everything that felt fake. He didn't go home that night. Instead, he found himself walking aimlessly down an alley in the older part of the city. The street was alive with colors, voices, and the smell of food. Lanterns swayed above, small food stalls, and vendors called out cheerfully to passers-by. It was loud, messy, full of life, and exactly what his soul needed. He stopped at a tiny corner stall, where a young woman in a plain yellow hoodie was laughing as she argued, playfully with the stall owner. "No, Uncle Zhao, I gave you 50. You're trying to keep my change again." The man chuckled, handing her a few coins. "You eat too much. This is your loyalty discount." She took the change and turned, only to find herself face to face with Ziyan. Her eyes widened slightly, surprised to see a man in a crisp designer suit standing there, clearly out of place. He blinked. She was ordinary. Her ponytail was a little messy, her shoes worn out, but her eyes, those eyes sparkled with something none of his elegant blind dates ever had. She looked alive. "You want some too?" she asked, holding out a stick of grilled meat toward him. He hesitated. No one had ever offered him street food like that before. Sure." He sat down beside her on a plastic stool, completely forgetting about his $1,000 shoes brushing against the dusty ground. She took another bite and chewed happily. "You don't look like the street food type." "Is it that obvious?" He smiled. "Very. But hey, life's too short for boring food and boring people." Ziyan laughed, genuinely. That was the moment everything shifted. Her name was Chen Yue. She wasn't rich. She wasn't polished. She worked part-time at a bookstore, sold handmade jewelry online, and had an unhealthy obsession with spicy tofu. She didn't ask about his net worth or family background. In fact, she didn't even recognize him. To her, he was just a tired-looking guy who needed a friend and a good meal. They ended up talking for hours that night about books, dreams, childhood memories. She didn't hold back, and she didn't pretend to be someone she wasn't. It was refreshing. It was real. And for the first time in a long time, Li Ziyan didn't feel like a CEO. He just felt like himself. But of course, life isn't a fairy tale. Not in the real world. Ziyan knew it wouldn't be that simple. His world was full of people who judged others by their last names and their bank accounts. Bringing a girl like Yue into that world would be like dropping a goldfish into the ocean. And there was another problem. His family. His grandfather had already chosen a fiancée for him. One of the women he'd been avoiding through these blind dates, elegant, well-mannered, and born into old money. Someone his family approved of. Someone the business world would accept. But Xian couldn't stop thinking about Yue Wei. Her laughter, her honesty, the way she looked at life like it, was an adventure instead of a contract. He tried staying away, told himself it was just a moment, a silly craving for simplicity. But every time he went back to those silent, polished dinners, or walked into boardrooms filled with fake smiles, he missed the sound of her voice, missed the smell of grilled skewers, missed her. So he went back, again and again. He bought food from her favorite vendors, sat with her on sidewalks, listened to her talk about the stars and the book she wanted to write someday, and slowly, he realized something terrifying. He was falling for her, not because she was different, but because she made him feel different. But Xian wasn't the only one watching this unfold. One of the women he rejected, Zhang Rolan, wasn't just angry. She was jealous and dangerous. She started digging. Who was this girl who had stolen the heart of one of the country's most powerful CEOs? What she found shocked her and gave her just the ammunition she needed to destroy everything. Because Chen Yue wasn't just a simple girl from the streets. She had a past, one she was hiding, one that could ruin everything. And as Xian stood on the edge of choosing between the life he was born into and the life he wanted with Yue, he had no idea how close he was to losing it all. Because love may come at first sight, but trust has to be earned. And when secrets start to surface, even the purest love can be tested. Chen Yue had never imagined that her life would take such a sharp turn. Just a few weeks ago, she was an ordinary girl, trying to make ends meet, juggling part-time jobs, and supporting her younger brother's education. Now, she was living under the same roof as Li Xian, the cold, ruthless CEO, known for breaking hearts and crushing competitors. Their sudden engagement had been nothing but a business arrangement to Li Xian, a way to silence rumors and secure a merger. But to Yue, it had turned her whole world upside down. At first, their interactions were icy. Xian rarely spoke unless it was about appearances or schedules. Yue, though intimidated, tried her best to follow his rules, afraid to make a mistake. But what neither of them expected was how fate began weaving its threads quietly, pulling them into each other's orbits in subtle, persistent ways. The more Xian observed Yue's sincerity and resilience, the harder it became for him to keep his walls intact. And Yue, despite her best efforts, began to see beyond the cold exterior. A man carrying the weight of deep scars and family betrayal. The tension began building the day Xian's ex-fiancée, Jiang Mengqi, returned from abroad. She walked into the office like she still owned a piece of him, her charm sharp, her eyes filled with challenge. Seeing Yue at Xian's side didn't make her jealous. It made her dangerous. How long do you think a girl like you can pretend to be someone she's not? Mengqi whispered into Yue's ear at a company gala, her voice laced with poison. Yue said nothing, but the sting lingered. She knew she wasn't from Xian's world. She didn't have wealth, reputation, or experience. But what she did, I have was heart, and slowly, that was what Xian had started to notice. Late-night conversations, accidental glances, quiet moments. They began to shift something unspoken between them. However, things took a darker turn when Yue's brother got into an accident. Hospital bills piled up, and her world began spinning again. To her shock, Xian stepped in without hesitation, paying everything without telling her. She only found out when the hospital staff thanked Mr. Li for his generosity. Conflicted, and overwhelmed, she confronted him. "Why would you do this?" she asked, standing in the doorway of his study. Xian didn't even look up from his papers. "Because you matter now." That single line left her speechless. But just as their fragile bond started to grow, a scandal broke out. Photos of Xian and Mengqi in an intimate moment leaked online, clearly staged, but convincing enough to set the internet on fire. Reporters swarmed the company. Yue was harassed at her part-time job. The public turned cruel, accusing her of being a homewrecker, a gold digger, an opportunist. Heartbroken and betrayed, Yue tried to walk away. "Maybe we were just pretending too well," she told him quietly, tears brimming in her eyes. Xian didn't stop her. He couldn't, because just hours earlier, he had discovered something far more dangerous. The scandal was just the beginning. His stepbrother, Li Wei, had been behind the leak. And worse, he was planning something far more destructive. To ruin Xian completely and claim control of the company. With Mengqi on his side and Yue now driven away, Xian stood alone in the middle of a storm. The tension reached its breaking point when Xian received an anonymous package, a video proving that the leaked photos were fake and Mengqi had drugged him. The message attached was clear. "If you don't leave the board in 3 days, the next scandal will bury you." Desperate and outnumbered, Xian realized he couldn't fight alone anymore. He needed Yue, not as a pawn, not as a shield, but as the only person who ever saw him as more than a title. And just as she was about to leave the city, her phone buzzed. "Chen Yue, I was wrong. Come back. I don't want to pretend anymore." Yue stared at the message on her phone, heart pounding. She had every reason to run, away from the chaos, from Xian, from the tangled mess of lies and betrayals. But something in his words reached her, cutting through the hurt and confusion. She took a deep breath and turned back toward the city she thought she'd leave behind. When she arrived at Xian's office, the atmosphere was tense. Xian looked different. No longer the cold CEO who kept everyone at a distance. There was a quiet urgency in his eyes, mixed with vulnerability she hadn't seen before. He didn't waste time with empty promises. "I need you, Yue. Not just for the company, but for me. We have to stop Li Wei and Mengqi before they destroy everything." Together, they started piecing together the truth. With Yue's help, Xian gathered evidence of Li Wei's betrayal and Mengqi's schemes. They worked late into the night, often exhausted, but growing stronger as a team. Yue's courage surprised Xian. She wasn't afraid to stand by him, to face threats head-on, even when the world seemed against them. The turning point came during a high-stakes board meeting. Li Wei and Mengqi had planned to vote Xian out, using forged documents and the public scandal to seal their victory. But Xian and Yue arrived with proof. Recordings, messages, and witnesses, exposing the lies and manipulation. The room fell. Silent as the truth sank in, Li Wei's face turned pale, and Mengqi's confidence shattered. The board voted overwhelmingly to keep Xian as CEO and remove Li Wei from any position of power. Justice was served, not through violence or revenge, but through truth and resilience. With the company saved, Xian and Yue finally had a moment to breathe. He took her hands gently and said, "Thank you for believing in me when I couldn't. Even believe in myself." Yue smiled, feeling a warmth she hadn't known was possible. "We're stronger together." Their engagement was no longer just a business arrangement. It was real. The media buzz faded, replaced by stories of their genuine partnership and growing affection. Yue's life transformed, not because of wealth or status, but because she chose to trust herself and the man who learned to open his heart. In the end, the biggest lesson was clear. No matter how difficult life gets, true strength comes from honesty, forgiveness, and standing beside those who see your real worth. And as Yue and Xian looked toward their future, hand in hand, they knew that no challenge could break them again. Together, they had turned pain into power and uncertainty into hope. Their story was only just beginning.